Hello, and welcome to the listening room at Spirit Source Connect. My name is Suzanne Goulet, and each week I'll be speaking to you about new spirituality and how it can increase your awareness of your divine connection to Source. You'll be offered insights, tools, and techniques so that you may improve, expand, and accelerate your spiritual growth. For more information and a free gift, please visit spiritsourceconnect.com. Enjoy! I've been greatly inspired this week by one of the lessons from A Course in Miracles, and I'm hoping it's going to offer some insights for you as well with what you might be challenged with. I'm going to read a little bit, and then I'm going to pause and take apart some of the concepts in this particular lesson and have a bit of discussion, my own extrapolation on what the Course is saying. You might find that the language of the Course is at a very high level of intellect. And so, if so, I'm going to just talk a little bit around some of the things that it's saying. But in actuality, I feel like the language of the Course is very simple. It's very profound. There's not a lot of extraneous language. And you'll find words like God. In this lesson, we're looking at salvation. We're looking at words that you might find are associated with previous religious traditions. And I don't have any problem with any of those words. I come from a traditional Catholic background. But if you are having issue, just replace the word with something that works better for you. You know, it's not been really for humanity to find the right words to place around this energy that we talk about as being God, or we're referring to now as Source or the universe or Allah, whatever you want to call it. Just use the word that's comfortable for you. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this lesson for today, which I'm very excited to share with you because it had a profound effect on me this week in particular. So this is lesson number 71 in the Course, and it's called Only God's Plan for Salvation Will Work. And I'm going to read a little bit of the beginning of this lesson. You may not realize that the ego has set up a plan for salvation in opposition to God's. It is this plan in which you believe. Since it is the opposite of God's, you also believe that to accept God's plan in place of the ego's is to be damned. This sounds preposterous, of course, yet after we have considered just what the ego's plan is, perhaps you will realize that, however preposterous it may be, you do believe in it. So I sat with this for a little bit, and what I realized is that if you're on a spiritual path, you're often trying to stay on that spiritual path, and that you will also find that you have quite a bit of demands of you in your normal everyday life. And then we've also been pressured to have long-term plans, to have long-range visions, to kind of worry about the future and how we're going to have our security there, or whether it's security in your health, or it's security in your relationships or in your finances. We're often worried about what's going on in the future for us, and we feel that if we just get certain things sorted out, we're going to be okay. And what this lesson is talking about is that is our ego's plan. That's our ego's plan for the salvation for ourselves and our future. We also have the ego's plan for our own salvation in the present, that if only certain things were going to be the way we want them to be, then we would be happy. If someone acted in a certain way, then we would be okay. If the person closest to me just changed in this way, then I just would be so much happier. Or if this certain financial situation just resolved itself, then for sure I would be happy. And the Course is telling us that this is all your ego's plan for how you're going to acquire your joy and your happiness. And it's not necessarily God's plan. So let me continue on a little bit with what the Course describes as the ego's plan. The ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. It maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, or if some external circumstance or event were changed, you would be saved. Thus, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside yourself. Each grievance you hold is a declaration and an assertion in which you believe that says, if this were different, I would be saved. The change of mind necessary for salvation is thus demanded of everyone and everything except yourself. Meaning, you're looking at all of these things outside yourself and saying, if this were different, then I would be happy. And it's all of those exterior things that your happiness is somehow dependent upon. The Course is asking us to shift our perception and come to a place where we realize it's only God's plan for our salvation that is going to work. So let me continue with this a little bit. The role assigned to your own mind in this plan, then, is simply to determine what, other than itself, must change if you are to be saved. According to this insane plan, any perceived source of salvation is acceptable, provided that it will not work. This ensures that the fruitless search will continue, for the illusion persists that, although this hope has always failed, there is still grounds for hope in other places and in other things. Another person will serve better. Another situation will offer success. So in all of these things we're looking at in the exterior of our lives, even though they may not be working out the way we want them to, we are still having hope that if this situation changed, then everything is going to be great. And if that situation ends up not working out the way we want to, another situation will pop up and we'll have a tremendous amount of hope in that situation, and we'll continue to place the dependency of our happiness in the exterior of our lives. I just want to take a minute and have everyone just pause and breathe and think of a situation in your life right now that you would really like to see changed. I'm sure we all have more than one, for sure. We have several situations that, okay, I want this to change. I want that to change. I want this person to be this way. I want finances to be happening like this. Especially we're reading and we're listening to quite a lot of spiritual material or motivational material, and we're being promised that in some instances we just have to identify what our dreams are, and our dreams will come true. And what the Course is trying to point out for us right here is that, like the lesson says, only God's plan for salvation will work. So let me continue with this particular lesson. Such is the ego's plan for your salvation. Surely you can see how it is in strict accord with the ego's basic doctrine. Seek, but do not find. For what could more surely guarantee that you will not find salvation than to channelize all your efforts in searching for where it is not? God's plan for salvation works simply because, by following His direction, you seek for salvation where it is. But if you are to succeed, as God promises you will, you must be willing to seek there only. Otherwise, your purpose is divided, and you will attempt to follow two plans for salvation that are diametrically opposed in all ways. The result can only bring confusion, misery, and a deep sense of failure and despair. So this really hit home for me because I have a number of activities that I'm participating in, and some of these activities are really trying to leave me, and I insist on sticking with them and making them work, and I'm infusing this huge hope that somehow it's going to work out. And I know in my heart this is not God's plan for me. But with the ego in place saying, well, you can't leave that. That's how you were making your living in the past. Or this is the person that you were closest to the past, and so you must hang on. The ego is threatening that you should do this, and you should hang on, when God's plan for me is really diametrically opposed. And this is what the Course is teaching us in this lesson. That God's plan for you and your ego's plan for you are diametrically opposed. And in this last paragraph, it says, if you really want to be living in total joy and total release and total freedom, you must follow God or Source's plan. I'm just going to start calling it Source to get rid of any kind of associations that people might have out there with the word God. I don't have a problem with it, like I said, but some people might. And so what the Course is saying is that you're either going to follow Source's plan for you, or you're going to follow your ego's plan for you. If you try to do both, you're still going to end up in what it says. The result can only bring confusion, misery, and a deep sense of failure and despair. Now, who here has not ever felt a deep sense of failure and despair? It is because you have experienced those feelings that you have reached up. You have decided to be on a spiritual path. You have decided to seek out information. You've decided to seek out your own inner source and your higher spirit. And there's so many wonderful teachers out there right now that can guide you, that can lead you. But I want to emphasize that this comes from your relationship with Source. Your continued knowledge, increasing knowledge, your continued passion, your continued commitment to follow God's plan for you is what is going to bring you total joy. And sometimes it's going to require that you make some radical decisions in your life, radical decisions for change. And only you can know if this is appropriate for you. You're going to have to understand the difference between what your ego is telling you and what your highest source energy is communicating to you. And I want to put a few words out there that can help you decide which voice is which. First of all, the ego is always based in fear. It's always asking you to make decisions to somehow protect yourself. It's always asking you to do what should be done in order to protect yourself, to defend yourself. You know, when you can be in battles with people, the ego is in full force. The ego is telling you, you shouldn't be treated like that. You're not going to take that crap from somebody. You need to act this way. You need to get revenge. You need to fight back. You need. It's the ego coming out of a place of fear, out of a place of wanting to defend and protect what it feels is its most important asset, the building up of itself. Now, God's plan for you is really quite different. If you're trying to determine which decision to make or which voice to listen to, which voice is the ego, which is the voice of my highest self guiding me to a place of serenity and joy, the instructions are often full of a great deal of compassion and understanding for your situation. The information is full of forgiveness for you. It's saying to you, I understand what you're going through. Try to see things this way. And there's often a great deal of forgiveness involved. Forgiveness for the other person, forgiveness for the situation that you're faced with, and forgiveness for yourself if you feel you may have acted wrong or done something wrong or haven't acted in your best. Information coming from Source is always full of love, compassion, and understanding. It's never demanding that you do anything. It's never going to ask you to fight back. It's always going to see that forgiveness is not a weak aspect. It's not an aspect of weakness. Forgiveness is an aspect of strength. It takes a great deal more energy and commitment to be able to say to the person who you feel has done you the most wrong, to say, I'm not going to tell you off. I'm not going to tell you what I think. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z to make things much harder for you in your life. I am simply going to forgive. And that's not always easily attainable. And what the Course asks us to do is to at least be willing to forgive and ask Holy Spirit to assist you in that. So I've gotten off track a little bit. I want to get back to this particular lesson, but I felt it was really important that the element of understanding the difference between your ego's demands on you and God's encouragement and requests of you are two very, very different things. And that's really the meat of this lesson, is that only God's plan for salvation for you will work. The ego's plan for your salvation will never work. You are constantly going to be searching for that release, that hope. It's the constant hope, and you never really even ever seem to get there. The situation never resolves itself. All these things in your exterior never really get there for you. Okay, so let's move on, because this is the resolution and the how-to of getting to the place of completely living in God's plan of salvation for you. We were last talking about if your purpose is divided, you will attempt to follow two different plans. You'll attempt to follow the ego's plan, and you'll attempt to follow God's plan. You're going to try to do both of these things at the same time. You say, well, I'm not ready to completely abandon my ego's plan for me. I really do want this to work out, and so I'm going to do both. I'm going to do ego's plan for me and God's plan for me and see how it all works out. And the Course is reminding us that your attempt to follow two plans for salvation are diametrically opposed and opposed in all ways. The result can only bring confusion, misery, and a deep sense of failure and despair. So how can we escape all this? Very simply. The idea for today is the answer. Only God's plan for salvation will work. There can be no real conflict about this, because there is no possible alternative to God's plan that will save you. His is the only plan that is certain in its outcome. His is the only plan that must succeed. And so the lesson goes on to encourage us to practice a few things during the day, a few questions that we can ask ourselves throughout the day. And I found myself doing this all the time. And sometimes if I'm getting really crazy busy with, multitasking, and I got 7 balls in the air at once, and I'm doing everything, sometimes I just stop. I just stop everything for a second and just breathe. And I ask about, what is the plan for me here now? What is God's plan for me? And I will always receive an answer. So let's continue here for a minute. God's plan for your salvation will work, and other plans will not. Do not allow yourself to become depressed or angry at the second part. It is inherent in the first. The second part being that your plan will not work. Don't get depressed and angry about that. It is in the first part of this lesson that your full release from all your own insane attempts and mad proposals to free yourself. They have led to depression and anger, but God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy. Remembering this, let us devote the remainder of the extended practice periods by asking God to reveal His plan to us. Ask Him very specifically, and if you're listening, I encourage you to write this down, because this is the way through. You're going to be asking Source very specifically. Source, your highest self. You're asking for information from a power that is much, much greater than you. It is your Creator. What would you have me do? That's the first question. What would you have me do? And I'm not talking about a career. I'm not talking about a situation in the future. It is in the now that we're asking this question. What would you have me do right now, in this moment? Sometimes it's to just stop your activities and have a rest and rejuvenate and get reconnected with yourself. Sometimes it's a matter of resting for a couple of days. I found myself needing to do that. And when I come back, I'm way more connected with my source and I'm feeling way more powerful. The second question is, where would you have me go? Sometimes we need to be going somewhere and doing something or talking to somebody. The third question is, what would you have me say and to whom? So it's interesting here because it's kind of insinuating that it's not quite enough that we are going to be sitting at home on the couch and meditating for hours and hours. There is action required of us, especially because we are born here in the West. We live in a society that is highly active, highly productive, and highly engaged in affecting the rest of the world. If you're listening to this station, you are one of these soldiers who is going to be out there affecting positive change in yourself, in the people around you, in your community, and the world beyond. It doesn't mean that you, by yourself, have to go out there and save the world or save all the starving children in India. It means that as you are improving yourself, getting connected with your higher source, following God's plan for salvation, the lifting of your vibration and your frequency has far-reaching effects all over the world. You don't have to know the results. You only have to continue to walk on the path, to continue to know the difference between your ego and source. What is the direction that you are receiving? And to follow this moment by moment. So many of us are caught up in what work should I do? What should I do with this relationship? What should I do with this car? All of these answers are going to be resolved when you have the highest and best connection with your own source. Not only your own source, it's the source of all of us. It's the source energy, it's the source frequency that connects all of us, that is constantly feeding all of us, that is constantly nourishing all of us. It's the source of all love, all creativity, all peace, all harmony. The Course refers to that as God. You can refer to that in any manner you wish. What's important is that you do refer to it, that you do get connected with it, and you allow it to continue to flow into your life. The three questions, again, that are being outlined for us to ask ourselves several times during the day. Number one is, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? And then we're just going to allow Source to have full charge of the rest of the practice period. This is simply a practice period they're asking us to participate in. You know, you can take 5, 10, 15 minutes to do this practice period. The point is not the length of time that you're doing it. The point is that you are finding a way to connect with your source. And I guarantee you, with willingness to listen and practicing these statements, you are going to be guided on what to do, where to go, and what to say, and to whom. It's as though something much greater than yourself is going to be leading you, and your only job really is to follow. is to open your mouth and speak out the words that you're being guided to speak. You have no idea the effects that you can have, but your body is a vehicle for delivering source information, God's salvation, to yourself and to others. We do have our relationships, we do have our interactions with others. Allow source to flow through you into those relationships, into your work, into all areas of your life, especially those that the ego has built and the ego has decided this is going to be your route to salvation. It likely is not. It never has been, and it never will be. Okay, I'm going to continue to read. Give Source full charge of the rest of the practice period and let him tell you what needs to be done by you in his plan for your salvation. He will answer in proportion to your willingness to hear his voice. Refuse not to hear. The very fact that you are doing the exercises proves that you have some willingness to listen. This is enough to establish your claim to God's answer. In the shorter practice periods, tell yourself often that God's plan for salvation and only his will work. Be alert to all temptation to hold grievances today and respond to them with this form of today's idea. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only his plan will work. Try to remember today's idea some 6 or 7 times an hour. There could be no better way to spend a half a minute or less than to remember the source of your salvation and to see it where it is. For me, this lesson was really profound. I've been a student of the Course for many years. I delved into the Course and spent 2 years doing the whole thing while I was living in Italy, and I had a much slower pace of life. I had support around me, and my communication with Spirit just catapulted into the stratosphere. And I believe it's because of those results of my doing this work that I am able to provide these guided meditations for seekers who are looking for a way to connect with their higher self. Thank you for listening. This is Suzanne Goulet, and for more information on how you can participate in free live events, please visit spiritsourceconnect.com. Thank you.